Britain finds itself teetering on the edge of a financial crisis, reminiscent of the turbulent 1970s. And at the centre of this storm is none other than our Chancellor, Rachel Reeves. So where exactly is Rachel during this national crisis?
Rachel Reeves has completely crushed the British economy, and now another huge bombshell has dropped.
With high taxes deterring business investment, job cuts have hit a 4-year high. Business leaders are blaming her budget. Food prices are set to soar by 20%. What has she done? She's off to China. She's gone to China amid all this chaos.
She is running away like a coward, and the entire country is left fuming.
Should resign, and I also think that the Tories made a heck of a lot of mistakes. I don't think she's got an easy job coming in, but you need to have someone who is qualified and able to handle that difficult situation.
Nobody trusts Rachel Reeves anymore, as she has been exposed to be a fraudster who lied on her CV.
Rachel, wherever you are, please come home. Your family misses you. I mean, the country doesn't, but we would appreciate it if you could come back and clean up the flipping mess you've made. Reeves has tanked the economy and she's nowhere to be seen. She didn't turn up to Parliament yesterday.
Performance, I think we've just seen. Which leads me to the question, where is the Chancellor?
After crashing the economy into a wall with her nightmare budget, Rachel Reeves is running away.
In the last 48 hours, borrowing costs have reached a 27-year high. And it is the Chancellor's decisions that have led us here.
Where is she? UK borrowing is the highest since 2008. The pound dropped below 1.22 against the dollar this morning. The government's 30-year borrowing costs hit the highest since 1998.
This week has been an absolute disaster for our economy, as the real consequences of her idiotic policies are out.
Investors believe the economy is trapped in a damaging cycle of no growth and rising inflation, with high taxes deterring business investment. Job cuts have hit a 4-year high. Business leaders are blaming her budget. Food prices are set to soar by 20%. What has she done? She's off to China. She's gone to China amid all this chaos.
Rachel Reeves has brought the economy to its knees, and now she's fleeing to China of all places.
Well, anyway, Rachel Reeves has given pay rises to her union mates. She's freezing pensioners, ruining farmers, crippling kids' educations, destroying businesses, collapsing the pound, and now she's legged it. She's done a runner. She couldn't even get a LinkedIn profile right. She had a below-average career, and now she's a way below-average chancellor.
Everything Rachel Reeves has done so far only proves just how incompetent and useless she is.
She's going to need a stiff drink when she's been given the sack, isn't she? Rachel Reeves is, and always has been, way out of her depth. Although I think she's done the country a massive favour, because by the time she's finished, there's no way this country is going to want a Labour Chancellor again for at least a generation.
Millions are demanding her resignation, and one thing is for sure, nobody trusts Starmer and his cronies anymore.
From Rachel Reeves to flee to China, because when you're absent as a Chancellor, you create a vacuum. You know, markets thrive off rumour and gossip. Yeah. What a strong Chancellor would have done was stay in the UK, cancel the trip. She was, facing a lot of pressure to, as Guido has, been following and reporting on, and said, don't worry, we have a plan. Don't bet against us, otherwise you'll lose out. I mean, to be fair, if she had done that, she's lost most of her credibility anyway.
Rachel's China bombshell might be her last mistake, as she's being exposed as a shameless coward.
What's really concerning about this is obviously she changed the rules from the OBR to be able to allow herself and the government to borrow more on different parameters. And what the markets are going to analyse this at the moment, I've been looking what Deutsche Bank have been saying, I've been looking what Goldman's have been saying on this, is that is actually deeply under pressure. And if they start getting this fiscal gap even more narrowed, then they'll have to say, right, we've got to ask for more money if we're going to lend it to you. Britain is in desperate debt because we're one of the top G7 countries that borrows more from financial markets across the globe, and without it, we don't survive.
Does she have to go?
They fiddled the fiscal rules and still managed to mess up so badly that the economy is crumbling.
In and around the Cabinet Office are all saying this is make or break territory. They've lost the plot. There is serious unrest within the party about Rachel Reeves, and it's not looking like it's going to get any better for her.
Let's think about this, right? So this was Keir Starmer's top team.
The Labour Party might be incompetent, but they're not stupid enough to let this disaster continue. Rachel Reeves is in serious trouble if she does not turn things around soon. Millions are demanding her resignation, and all the while, Labour's reputation is tanking. The entire nation has lost all faith in Starmer and his gang, and he might get rid of her much sooner than you might think. This Chinese escape bombshell isn't something minor. The details of her visit are even more irresponsible and downright stupid.
Britain finds itself teetering on the edge of a financial crisis, reminiscent of the turbulent 1970s. And at the centre of this storm is none other than our Chancellor, Rachel Reeves. So where exactly is Rachel during this national crisis? Oh, that's right, she's in China. Yeah, possibly with a begging bowl, attempting to secure some sort of deal that will create growth in our economy.
We have not seen a disaster like this in decades, and there's only Rachel Reeves to blame for it. They came into government with all sorts of promises, and Rachel assured us that she had a plan. However, as time goes on, the reality is getting clearer for all of us to see. Not only does she have no clue as to what she is doing, she's actively making things worse by delusional policies that were bound to fail from the start. Meanwhile, the deal she's securing with China is just another blunder on her never-ending list.
But Rachel, on the other hand, along with the UK's political elite, have done very little to help out our economy, to turn her back on the growth of our own coal and steel industries so they can turn their noses up at other countries to show how good we are at subscribing to a net zero pipe dream without any real backup.
Labour has this sinister agenda to pander to the world and virtue signals every chance they get, which is exactly why they're hammering our own industries in this nonsense green energy scheme. Just try to wrap your head around this. Labour is shutting down our coal industries and Rachel is in China to get more solar panels to somehow make up for it. Our energy bills are about to get much higher, and that's just the start of a miserable life under this shambolic government. On top of all that, Rachel has more plans for you.
Financial markets are in a state of upheaval. This morning we witnessed gilt yields climbing to levels not seen in almost 3 decades. And for those unfamiliar with the term gilt yields, they are essentially the interest rates on UK government bonds. Now, when these rates rise, it becomes more expensive for the government to borrow money, which can have a far-reaching effect for the rest of the economy.
What does this tell you about the priorities of this government? Starmer and Rachel Reeves are focusing on all the wrong things, and as a result, everyone has lost trust in them. It's just the British citizens either. Foreign investors know that Rachel is about to destroy the British economy, so they're running away as far as they can. On top of all that, she refuses to learn her lesson and continues to borrow more money without actually investing it properly. Rishi Sunak warned us, and he was absolutely right. There's a financial crisis coming, and Rachel Reeves is nowhere to be found.
Rachel Reeves has embarked on her own journey to the east. The timing couldn't be more questionable, as Britain grapples with what could potentially evolve into a full-blown financial crisis. But our Chancellor has decided that now is the opportune moment to build bridges with Beijing. Some could say she's running away.
It should be common sense for Rachel that leaving Britain on fire to go on her little useless trips isn't exactly the best of ideas. But then again, it'd be foolish of us to expect Labour to not make stupid decisions. Pretty much everything they've done so far has left this country in a worse position than it was before. If you put aside the lack of logic behind her actions, even the fact that she's in China right now sends a horrible message. Is our Chancellor trying to run away from the consequences of her own actions?
Rishi Sunak was right.
The Chancellor inherited lower borrowing than France, America, Italy and Japan, and the second lowest debt in the entire G7. So any which way you look at it, Labour's claims about their inheritance are purely ludicrous. These are her choices, so stop blaming everyone else and take responsibility.
Of course, she's trying to run away because Labour has run all out of excuses. We've heard Starmer and Rachel Reeves whine countless times about inheriting a damaged economy and how they were the ones who will bring stability and growth. Sadly, all that nonsense about black holes has been debunked, and the simple truth is that Rachel Reeves just has no idea what she's doing. Not only did she lie on her CV, she's been lying to us about everything.
Economics that you cannot borrow your way out of a borrowing crisis. The options available to the Chancellor are limited and potentially painful for the average Briton. We could be looking at increased income tax rates, which they promised not to raise in their manifesto, a raise in VAT, which again they promised not to raise in their manifesto, higher corporation tax, well, most businesses are struggling under the current burden, this will hardly incentivise growth.
There seems to be no end in sight with the way Rachel Reeves is handling things. She keeps digging herself and the British economy into a hole, and there's not much that can be done to get out. We can expect another tax raid and many more broken promises from this government. At the end of the day, we'll be the ones who get clobbered and have to deal with the consequences of Rachel Reeves's actions. Labour's manifesto was a sick joke, and just try and remember how Rachel fooled us all into believing that she was competent.
Let me remind you of Rachel Reeves and how optimistic she was just a few short months ago.
Rachel Reeves is a serious economist. It's beyond time to put her ideas and energy into action.
With me as Chancellor, you'll get economic stability. Stability to protect family finances.
Labour's first step to deliver economic security is going to help me and my customers.
So the first step in Labour's mission to restore growth is to deliver economic stability.
The only stability that Rachel Reeves has brought is the stable pace at which she is destroying this country financially. Their whole marketing stunt during the elections was either fake positivity or just pure delusion. It's hard to believe, but Rachel Reeves just might seriously believe that she has done nothing wrong. Meanwhile, the entire nation knows just how incompetent and useless she is. And guess where her optimism has led us to?
Can probably just about make out is, look, that's the 10-year borrowing rate, the 10-year gilt yield, and it is up to the highest level since 2008.
At the moment, what it costs the government to borrow money is at its highest rate since 2008.
Rachel Reeves is under pressure because of the rising cost of government debt, which means that there's less money for other things, essentially.
It's been a rough old day for the government on the financial markets. Let's look at UK 10-year borrowing costs.
Did Rachel Reeves sail too close to the wind in the budget?
That's even higher, and actually it's at the highest rate since 1998.
We are watching a slow car crash, and we're the ones who are inside the car. Make no mistake, this is an economic disaster, the likes of which have not been seen for decades. Labour loves to complain about the Tories, and while some of that criticism is valid, Rachel Reeves has been worse for the economy by every single metric there is. To make matters worse, we're only beginning to feel the full consequences of this mess, and Labour's priorities are still horribly misaligned. The nation is up in flames, and they're focusing on all the wrong things, like making an enemy out of Elon Musk.
I mean, the problem is, it sort of sounds slightly self-gratifying to say, well, lots of people did say that this was going to happen, but a lot of people did look at the incoming budget in the build-up and say, oh, this doesn't sound good, including a lot of newspapers and journalists who'd previously backed Labour at the election, which I also found rather amusing. Kind of like, well, what did you expect? It's the Labour Party.
It wasn't just the Tories that warned us of the disaster that Labour would bring. Many independent journalists and experts knew this was going to happen. Despite that, we decided to give Starmer and his band of shameless hypocrites a chance, and they bottled it. One look at the budget and you could tell that burdening businesses with more taxes wasn't exactly the brightest idea that Rachel Reeves has had.
So as the Chancellor looks worried, even fearful, she has every reason to be. A slow-motion car crash is heading her way. Now, I'm sure it won't be long before somebody pops up and says, stop attacking Rachel Reeves just because she's a woman. Well, guess what? That's not what's going on. We're attacking her because she's a useless Chancellor, always was going to be, and is now in danger of smashing the economy, never mind the gangs.
Rachel Reeves is terrified, and she's running around on her trip to China to try and damage control. But it's too late. Some delusional supporters of Labour are still coming up with excuses to defend this unacceptable behaviour, and it's backfiring horribly for her. It was Starmer who proudly brought up the fact that she is the first woman Chancellor, and people are simply fuming over how incompetent she is. Nobody cares about the gender if her merit is down in the gutter.
And it shows you how ludicrous this whole financial sector has become, you know, because now the city is saying that, you know, there's going to be absolutely no growth whatsoever. All of the papers this morning suggesting that there's going to have to be massive cuts in public spending, which is no doubt going to fall flat on the shoulders of the people who actually need public services. They're not going to be able to put any money into the NHS. They're not going to be. We've got schools threatening, teachers threatening to go on strike. You know, train drivers, more strikes coming from them.
It's not just about more taxes either. The situation is far worse and concerning than that, given that our economy is flatlining and there's absolutely no growth to be seen anywhere. That means there's less money to spend. The quality of life in Britain is about to tank thanks to Rachel Reeves, and that spells even more trouble for us. Things will get more expensive, healthcare will be practically impossible to get, and unemployment will be through the roof. And guess what Labour is doing about it? They're trying to fool us with their typical distractions.
Politicians here and in Europe are using this to distract from what else is going on. They love this, actually, that they can talk about Elon Musk's nasty tweets, so we don't have to talk about the bonfire of the economy.
No.
We don't actually have to talk about dealing with grooming gangs, because we can talk about what the real problem is, which is social media. But all it does is just reinforce to a lot of people the impotency.
The economy is ruined, our society is collapsing, and Labour is busy whining about Elon Musk of all people. Starmer got his ego hurt by some mean tweets, and now, all of a sudden, punishing Musk is a bigger priority on their lists. Make no mistake, this is just a deflection tactic that Labour, and especially Starmer, love to use. Labour is in crisis mode because people are demanding resignations, and they're doing everything they can to damage control the situation.
The Chancellor's socialist budget has plunged UK markets into a frenzy this week, as reality has finally sank in. The news has sent the pound nosediving to new lows last felt when inflation was at 7%. This isn't just some abstract market dip, it's the death knell for British ambition.
The ideological madness of Labour, paired with Rachel Reeves's clueless policies, were a recipe for destruction, and we made the mistake of trusting them. Labour has always had this socialist agenda behind them, and they've been pushing their sinister plans from the very beginning. Remember how they gave inflation-busting pay rises to the public sector? That was just the beginning, and the financial markets are a complete chaos right now.
Your mortgage? Well, that could rise by an eye-watering £1,000, with rates soaring from 3.8% to 3.9% following the budget. Planning to remortgage this year? Well, think again, because that could cost you an unpalatable £3,500. And bad news doesn't end there, unfortunately. Remember all that talk of nut zero reducing your bills?
Naturally, you'll be the one to bear the consequences of her idiotic actions. With inflation and mortgage rates going through the roof, owning a house or a decent standard of living is now practically impossible in Britain. Is this the change that Starmer kept promising us? All of this could have been prevented if, instead of throwing our money away on lunatic green energy programs, they focused on encouraging growth first.
The last time you may have felt the burn of the economy was the media frenzy over the mini budget.
So let's look at the facts. Rachel Reeves borrowed far more in her budget than we did in 2022, but with no plans to pay it back through increased economic growth.
Back when the mini budget came out, Labour completely lost their mind and countless accusations were flying at the Tories. Not just that, Starmer and Rachel Reeves still whine about it as if what they're doing isn't much worse. The nightmare budget that Rachel Reeves came up with has been the single worst thing for this nation's economy in a long while. In fact, we were doing financially better when there was a whole pandemic around. What does that tell you about the catastrophic failure that this government has been?
Businesses are liquidating at record highs, and millionaires who contribute 25% of the nation's tax bill, well, they're fleeing en masse. And where is the Chancellor during this economic bloodbath? One might imagine she's lounging in business class, coming back from securing a measly £600 million deal with China as our economy burns.
This sudden China trip was such a huge bombshell for everyone because nobody expected Rachel Reeves to be this irresponsible. As we speak, many businesses are shutting down and leaving the country, and she's busy securing just $600 million. Sure, that might look like a huge sum, but compared to what we're losing, it's absolutely nothing. The Conservatives had their flaws, but at least they left a growing economy.
The United Kingdom is now doing worse than Greece. Greece! Where they had to be bailed out by Germany and all the rest of it. And all this nonsense you were saying, if you don't mind my saying, Bill, that we're just doing the same as everywhere else in the world, that's not so either. Because the economic situation was very poor nationally when Liz Truss was doing it, but at least it was in parallel. We're worse than Greece, we're worse than France, we're worse than Germany, and of course, we're worse than Italy.
The fact that Rachel Reeves managed to bring us lower than Greece in terms of growth is baffling. It'd be impressive if it weren't so pathetic. As for the European Union that Starmer loves, countries like Germany are doing exceptionally better than us. It's simply because those countries figured out that this socialist agenda was going to get them nowhere, so they decided to get a grip and turn things around. Whether or not Starmer and Rachel Reeves will do the same seems unlikely, but one thing is for sure, Rachel is on borrowed time.
I think that Rachel Reeves should resign, and I also think that the Tories made a heck of a lot of mistakes. I don't think she's got an easy job coming in, but you need to have someone who is qualified and able to handle that difficult situation. This is a woman who was barely qualified in the first place, and then we found out
Rachel from accounts,
and then we found out she lied
Customer
on her
complaint.
CV. She was actually
Customer complaint. To be fair,
and now,
track record as an economist.
I'm sorry, but you do not have to be a genius to figure out that a budget that raises taxes by 40 billion is not going to be a budget for growth that grows the economy. She seems to be surprised.
If Rachel Reeves had any shame, she would have resigned by now. Not just because she's incompetent, but because of the countless scandals she's been involved in, like the CV lying scandal. Rachel Reeves and Labour have lost all credibility and nobody trusts them anymore. In fact, the polls show that Labour might not be winning another election for quite some time. There's nowhere left to escape for her, as millions are demanding her resignation. On the other hand, even the Labour Party is looking to get rid of her. This government must be held to account, and that's something you can help out by liking this video and subscribing to the channel.